What happens when a network tries to build a gritty, soulful vigilante drama on the ashes of a canceled detective show? The creators retooled the world, gave the show deeper roots, a spiritual core, and a sharper edge. So why did it barely last a season? Let's find out. This is the history of A Man Called Hawk. When Spencer for Hire was winding down, one thing was clear: audiences couldn't get enough of Hawk. His popularity made the next step almost inevitable. Give him his own series, his own stories, and even his own city. At Avery Brooks' request, Hawk was pulled out of Boston's alleyways and dropped into the streets of Washington, D.C. The new setting was more than cosmetic. It shifted the tone, the stakes, and the cultural heartbeat of the show. Hawk wasn't Spencer's backup anymore. He was the main event. Brooks framed Hawk as a mythic black hero whose presence in Washington, D.C. gave the series both cultural identity and political weight. The plan was always to keep Hawk shrouded in mystery. To keep the show authentic, writer and poet Calvin C. Herndon was hired as cultural advisor. He worked with the team to ensure Hawk's worldview avoided stereotypes while still resonating with audiences. Avery Brooks stressed early on that being the lead didn't automatically grant him creative control. He pointed out that network stars were often more figureheads than decision makers, and that this was especially true for a black actor in primetime television. That was why he pushed to shape Hawk's setting, philosophy, and presence, not to build a vanity project, but to give the character real cultural weight. For Avery Brooks, stepping into A Man Called Hawk meant defining the character on his own terms. He described Hawk as a handsome, powerful, and spiritual African-American man, wise, disciplined, and cultured. Brooks also helped define the sound. He co-composed the main theme with Stanley Clarke and Lawrence Morris, who handled much of the show's score. Supporting Hawk was Old Man, played by Moses Gunn, a recurring character from Hawk's past who appears throughout the series. Angela Bassett appears in the pilot as Bailey Webster, a schoolteacher who asks Hawk for help with one of her students. The show's 13-episode run included a long list of guest appearances from actors who would go on to major careers. Among them, Samuel L. Jackson, Wesley Snipes, Delroy Lindo, and many more.
Hey, what are you guys doing?
A Man Called Hawk premiered on January 28, 1989 as a mid-season replacement, and the initial response was mixed. On the surface, the idea of a black vigilante lead was seen as bold and intriguing. The pilot episode drew curiosity from fans of Spencer for Hire, but the reaction from television critics and media analysts was more cautious. TV Guide's Meryl Panett praised Brooks' screen presence and the production value, writing that the show looked slick and noting Brooks' colorful interpretation of Hawk. But Panett criticized the writing for being formulaic, stating, "We've been fed so many crime shows by the networks that nothing the writers come up with seems original anymore." While Panett acknowledged the show tried to show Hawk's thoughtful and charitable sides, he still found the character lacking in dimension. His conclusion was blunt: while we may enjoy the way Brooks portrays Hawk, if you've seen one episode, you've seen them all. Others echoed that assessment. The New York Times' John J. O'Connor gave the premiere a lukewarm 6 out of 10. Robert B. Parker, who had little to do with the series beyond a single credit, later dismissed the show publicly. In terms of viewership, the show failed to maintain momentum, and by the spring of 1989, A Man Called Hawk was tied for 63rd place in the weekly Nielsen ratings. When the 1988 to 1989 TV season rankings were released, the show had plummeted to 80th place out of all network series, far below the threshold needed for renewal. As one columnist observed, the chances of cancellation increased dramatically for shows ranked between 50 and 70. And the only way a show ranked below 70 will survive is if its network is unusually committed to it. There was also organized pushback from conservative groups. The Reverend Donald Wildman and his watchdog group targeted A Man Called Hawk alongside shows like Miami Vice and Tour of Duty. Wildman condemned the show for high incidents of sex, violence, profanity, and urged advertisers to withdraw support. His group called the show vile and violent and immoral. Ironically, some viewers held the opposite complaint, that ABC had neutered Hawk's edge compared to his depiction in Spencer for Hire. As one commentator noted sarcastically, "My gripe was that it wasn't vile and violent and immoral enough." In the end, the show's initial reception was a clash of high expectations and uneven execution. Viewers and critics admired Avery Brooks' charisma and the cultural ambition behind the show, but weak scripts and poor ratings dragged it down. The arrival of A Man Called Hawk brought a whirlwind to the DC area. The production spent about $1.3 million on each episode, and a lot of that money stayed in the district. Warner Brothers also agreed that 50% of the extras used were unemployed local residents. Filming touched nearly every corner of the city: Adams Morgan, Georgia Avenue, Capitol Hill, Civil Court, and even the district building. Crowds frequently gathered at locations, proud to see their neighborhoods on screen. As one woman watching a shoot on Georgia Avenue explained, it was meaningful because most television depictions of Washington focused only on monuments. On set, Avery Brooks stood out, often dressed in black leather, calm and commanding amid the chaos of lights, cameras, and rerouted traffic. Police redirected cars, vans lined the streets, and barriers held back curious spectators. One of the more ambitious shoots took the production to Gallaudet University, where the team spent 10 days filming an episode built around Hawk's relationship with two teens, one deaf, the other struggling to come to terms with his progressive hearing loss. University officials reviewed the script, students were used as extras, and the Gallaudet dancers appeared on screen. When the crew saw athletes with disabilities practicing on the track, they were also incorporated into the episode, reinforcing the show's commitment to representation. For many in the city, Hawk's presence carried a strong sense of pride. Residents recognized the rarity of seeing black neighborhoods and culture represented on primetime network television, and the excitement around filming was matched by the awareness that the opportunity might not last long. Despite the attention it drew in Washington, A Man Called Hawk struggled to find a national audience. Ultimately, ABC pulled the plug after one season. The Saturday time slot was a major problem. Saturday night television was a graveyard, and Hawk couldn't overcome it. Avery Brooks reprised the role in a series of Spencer television movies produced for Lifetime in the early 1990s. These included Spencer Ceremony in 1993, Spencer Pale Kings and Princes, and Spencer the Judas Goat in '94, and Spencer A Savage Place in 1995. In each of these films, Hawk continued his familiar role as Spencer's formidable ally, keeping the spirit of the character alive beyond the original shows. When Brooks moved on to Star Trek Deep Space Nine, the shadow of Hawk still followed him. Producers initially required him to keep his hair rather than return to Hawk's iconic bald look, so the distinction between Hawk and Captain Sisko was clear to viewers. Only in the show's 4th season was he allowed to appear bald again, which he described as reclaiming his own identity on screen. Hawk returned again at the end of the decade, though played by different actors. When A&E began adapting Robert B. Parker's novels into made-for-TV movies, Hawk appeared in Spencer Small Vices and later in Walking Shadow. The character did return to the screen in 2020 with the Netflix original film Spencer Confidential, directed by Peter Berg. Loosely based on Parker's characters, it reimagined Spencer as a younger ex-cop played by Mark Wahlberg with Winston Duke as Hawk. A Man Called Hawk has never received an official home video release. Fans have kept it alive through bootlegs and collector sets that circulate online. For a while, the full series was available for free on Tubi, but it was pulled from the service in 2024. Some episodes occasionally surface on YouTube or through fan uploads, but the quality varies, and the show remains difficult to access in any consistent or official form. The lack of availability has left A Man Called Hawk in an unusual position, remembered for its ambition and cultural weight, but largely absent from the TV nostalgia market. So why did A Man Called Hawk barely last a season? It had the style, the vision, and a lead unlike anything else on television. The audience didn't stay, and the network moved on. And if you want to see how another show faced its own struggles and then became the most watched series in the world, stick around for our video on Baywatch. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content.